We need to go to Hussein Aladi's house. We want to go to the house.
And since they have guns, common sense says this is as far as we go. Through the heat haze, you can see the extent of army operations. They're not just using the house for observation, they're firing from here. But perhaps most worrying of all, the army insists that there always be members of the family in the house. So I asked the Israeli army spokesman why they insisted on members of the house being there at all times.
This house has been now used for 4 months by the Israeli army. The Palestinian side is looking at this house now as a target. So for security reasons, for our own security and for their own security, even if it seems a little bit illogical, irrational, we have asked them not to get out from the house altogether.
But you are using them as human shields for the soldiers who are on the roof now.
No, I categorically deny this statement, not at all.
Well, how would you describe their role if it's not to prevent Palestinians firing upon it?
There's the soldiers.
The soldiers?
Yes.
What are they doing here?
We are prison here.
What's happening?
They are keeping here, and the soldiers is upstairs. We cannot move. We cannot speak with you.
You can't leave the house?
No.
They told you that?
Yes, I can't breathe.
How long are they going to stay?
I don't know.
Are they paying you any money?
You are kidding.
I'm kidding.
Abdul Nassif, the bank manager, said he had to get to his bank to open the safe, but that soldiers won't let him go. He told us when the soldiers come, they wake everybody up and herd them into a kitchen for hours while soldiers sleep in their bedrooms. They can't leave or use the phone or let us in. He sent us downstairs to see if his brother would open the door so we could ask the soldiers why they keep taking over this house.
You want to come?
Yes. Just open the door and then...
The soldiers close the door from the keys. They take the keys.
So we left, and that night, so did the soldiers. But when we returned 2 days later, the soldiers were back for more surveillance. This time, they kept the women under house arrest, but let the men go to work and the children go to school. When the children returned, we caught a glimpse of 2 armed soldiers at the top of the stairs. Then more children came home, but the soldiers wouldn't open the door again.
They say if you don't go back behind the wall, the children will not enter the house.
But this is where the children live.
Yeah, but you need to go away from the door so I can let the children come in, okay?
Who are you?
He's a commander here.
He's the commander here.
Yeah.
Can we talk to you?
No.
Well, we're talking to you now. Why don't you tell us what you're doing here? Have you lost your voice? Well, they've closed the door now. They've closed the window. So I guess if the children are going to get home, we have to leave. So that's what we'll do.
There is a list. This list, in Arabic, this list says the operation against Israel. This is a Guardian list.
There are 7 days, there are 7 days, there are 7 days in a week.
We first saw the solar panels, then the electricity goes here, and it goes down directly to the tunnel. Now you can see the tunnel. You can see the tunnel. The tunnel is let down more than 20 meters down.
One thing I want to bring up, because it seems like he's trying to imply that he's on the ground floor, is that there's something in the corner of the screen here that shows on the camera. It kind of looks like aluminum roof tiles, which would mean he's on the roof. Now this looks exactly like a 3-phase inverter electrical box for an elevator. There's also a chance that it could be a solar pump for water. Something like this. See that black box in the center? and the green and red buttons looks almost identical to that one, right? But the reason that I say that it's most likely for an elevator is because of this. You know, the elevator shaft. There's elevator cabin slides, and there's also a flat cable, which connects the cabin to the electrical box. And this is most likely used in a hospital to bring up equipment. Group H didn't build this. And again, no proof of tunnels. That is an elevator shaft, not a tunnel. I could keep going, but you get my point. Like, the whole video is a lie.
I'm here because I care. I'm here because children everywhere are suffering, and because 40,000 people die each day from hunger. I'm here because those people are mostly children.
My name is Rachel Corey. I'm from the United States. I'm from Olympia, Washington.
Rachel Corey became internationally famous when she was crushed to death by a bulldozer in Gaza last year.
Jacob, you know this is not your house.
Yes, but if I go, you don't go back. So what's the problem? What are you yelling at me? I didn't do this. I didn't do this.
But
it's easy to yell at me, but I didn't do this.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No.
From the Torah to have any mercy whatsoever during war. Not on children, not on women, not on anybody.
But the point is right here that Hashem say, do not have mercy on the children. Kill all their children also. Why? There's no difference between them and their children. In 10 years from now, these children will attack you on the way. Hashem knows, God knows.
Many years ago, the US and UK invaded Iraq. Today, Tony Blair is free to go on television, has made a huge amount of money, the same with George Bush. At the same time, Julian Assange languishes in Belmarsh prison because he told the truth about this war.
Line them all up.
There is something deeply wrong with a society with those kind of priorities. When you look at the people who brought us the war in Iraq, the people who used everything at their disposal, the state machine, parliament, the media, when you look at what all those people did, nobody has faced any of the consequences. Even when the Chilcot report reported, Tony Blair set up his own press conference, paid for by the immense wealth which he now has, the many houses that he has. He was made envoy for peace in the Middle East. He was given a knighthood last year. Whereas all the people who told the truth about the war, the people who marched, what happened to them? The Muslim community penalised by the PREVENT system for telling the truth and for standing up for their rights. The people like Julian Assange, imprisoned in Belmarsh for all these years for telling the truth. I remember Tony Blair, the day of February the 15th, when we had so many people marching in London. He said, even if 1 million people march in London, that's not as many as Saddam Hussein killed. Well, the war in Iraq ended up killing more people. He talked about human rights. This is about democracy. It's about getting rid of a dictatorship. After he stopped being Prime Minister, what did he spend his time doing? Advising dictators. The truth is, all of these were lies. All of them were things where they said, we are going to make things better, and actually they made it worse. And not just in Iraq. In the last 20 years, armament worldwide, amount of money spent on military has doubled. Nearly $2 trillion are now spent on arms every year, making the world a much more dangerous place. We've now got conflict, not just between dictator in the Middle East and the biggest imperial power in the world, the United States. We've now got effectively a proxy war in Ukraine between two major imperial powers, and both of them with nuclear arms. We've got the much more real possibility of war with China. Again, this will be a nuclear war and therefore the devastation of humanity. So exactly the opposite of what we were told 20 years ago has turned out to be the case. It's a more dangerous world. Iraq's a much more dangerous place. We have far more refugees than we had then. The Taliban in Afghanistan back in control. Terrorism has grown, and indeed, where did ISIS and Al-Qaeda come from? Well, in Iraq they came from British-occupied Basra province, where they were formed in prison, where many Iraqis were in prisons. And the shameful thing is that the people who created the war are still being given awards, are still making huge amounts of money, and in the case of Tony Blair is still being invited onto the BBC to give his views on absolutely everything, instead of being in the dock at The Hague, which is where I think most people in Britain would like him to be. From the very beginning, from the time he went to Bush's ranch in the spring of 2002, Tony Blair was absolutely fully committed to every aspect of the war in Iraq. He lied about the existence of weapons of mass destruction, which had never been found because they didn't exist, and there were all sorts of people who said so at the time, including the UN weapons inspectors, who you might think would be people who did have some particular knowledge about this. This was all dismissed by Blair, by Alistair Campbell, when they devised a dossier. And this is the man who promoted the dossier. It was over the Evening Standard that day. Iraq can attack Britain in 45 minutes. I think a period of silence from Alistair Campbell would be welcomed by everybody, instead of which he seems to be in podcasts and on couches all over the TV studios. This tells you something about the lack of integrity and the lack of morals of so much of our media coverage. I think the media role was very, very important, and again, that hasn't really been held to account at all. If you look at the broadcast media, particularly the BBC, it was an absolute disgrace. I remember Andrew Marr, who was the political correspondent, who just after the war started said Tony Blair had won this argument.
He said that they would be able to take Baghdad without a bloodbath, and that in the end the Iraqis would be celebrating, and on both of those points he has been proved conclusively right, and it would be entirely ungracious, even for his critics, not to acknowledge that tonight he stands as a larger man and a stronger Prime Minister as a result.
20 years on, this is so important because it's not just about the past, it's not just about the present, it's also about the future. And this question of war is going to become a bigger and bigger question over the next 2 or 3 years. The project for a new American century was essentially about trying to redraw the world on pro-US lines. American hegemony had to be maintained and had to be extended. Many of Bush's key advisors were people who were part of that project. They could see that China was a rising power. It's a rising power economically. It was also becoming a major military power. China is today the second biggest military power in the world. It has long been a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and it has long been a nuclear power. So the project saw the threat of China as a very real one. And they wanted to change the politics of the Far East, of the Pacific, in terms of the rise of China, and to strengthen the United